people that learn the fastest are people who experiment with the new words from our lessons.
Majority of them do not know how to learn, right?
Like you have to make that mental effort to remember.
And you don't even ask that question because you are afraid that somebody's going to shout at you.
Close your eyes and imagine 2 piles of poo. And he looked at me and he said, "Can you hear yourself?"
It works.
Imagine massive piercing. Okay.
We're not leaving the studio today, you know? Welcome to the next episode of our podcast, Ask No Nurture. And today we have a very, very special guest. It's Aldona.
Hi.
Hi, Aldona. It's so nice that you actually came because Aldona is coming from Lublin, where she moved last year. So what I want to say is that I have been working with Aldona for over 3 years now.
Yeah, it's been 3 years.
When I first met you, we had this job interview. I was like, where was she hiding from me? Do people like this walk on this earth? And basically, we've been through a lot, and we have worked with many different clients. You have also developed yourself and our team so much. I'm very grateful to you for that. And because of this, we're recording an episode about learning strategies because this is your bread and butter, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Is there anything else I missed that you would like to say about yourself?
Not really. No, you pretty much summarized it perfectly. Thank you.
Lovely. So the first question I have for you is, what made you a methodology manager? How did you come to become one? So what is it about methodology that makes you tick?
You know that for the past few days, I've been thinking a lot about this question, like honestly. And, the first thing that came to my head, and it just kept coming back, was why does anyone do anything? What I mean is, for example, my husband, for some reason, a couple of years ago, he was obsessed with black holes.
Oh.
Why? No one knows. And he read a lot about it. And he kept telling me all those stories. I was like, yeah, just pretend that you understand what he's saying. Or another example, he loves watching cows' hoofs being fixed on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
If a cow has a problem with a hoof, there are people that can fix that. And he watched that.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow.
So, but why am I talking about this? I know that it sounds strange, but... when I went to the UK for the first time, I was hooked on English. Mm-hmm. And before that, I was a very, very average student. Like if you had told me 15 years ago that I would be a teacher today, mm-hmm. or that I would be speaking English fluently, I would have laughed in your face.
15 years ago.
Yeah, because I think I started learning English. Of course, I had English in high school, but I started learning English actively when I was about 19, 20 years old, and I'm 36 still.
Good for you.
Yeah, so when I went to the UK for the first time, I was hooked on English, and then I came back home, and I started studying sociology, not English, sociology, and then I went back to the UK the next year, and that's when I met my husband, mm-hmm. and it just kind of happened naturally. And I graduated from sociology in Poland. Then we moved to the UK and I worked in a cafe. And I just wanted to do something else with my life. Mm-hmm. And I just simply enjoyed learning English. So I did CAE, CPE, and then I did CELTA. It just kind of happened naturally later on.
It's like one thing led to another,
Exactly,
right?
Thank you, exactly. But there was one thing that I really wanted to mention. So I know it's just kind of happened, and that's why I started with the question, why does anyone do anything? Mm-hmm. And obviously I enjoy teaching, and I enjoy training teachers as well for a variety of reasons. Because I simply enjoy, I know it sounds cliche, but I simply enjoy sharing my knowledge with other people. Mm-hmm. But then, I found this video on YouTube. There is this Harvard professor, Arthur Brooks, I think he's called. Mm-hmm. And he talks a lot about happiness. And I've been into the topic of happiness for a very long time now. I don't know why. I also find it fascinating, but from the scientific point of view. Mm-hmm. And he has this video. And in this video, he answers the question, can work bring you happiness, right?
All right.
And he says, it can, but you need to seek two things. So the first thing is what he calls earned success. And the second thing is service to others. So earned success, I'll start with service to others. So service to others means that you have to feel like your job matters to others. And then earned success means that you put a value into your own life and into other people's lives.
This just describes our jobs.
I know, exactly, right? And when I first watched this video, I thought, okay. I mean, I still have to pay taxes. You have to feed myself. Because in this video, he also says that, obviously you need to earn money, but it shouldn't be your primary goal, right?
Oh, okay.
And I used this video many times in my lessons, and that was the first thing that my students said. They said, Aldona, it's all unicorns and rainbows. It's great, but I have to feed myself. But then I started thinking about it, like really thinking about it. And I know it sounds cheesy, but I thought, yes, exactly. That's how I feel about my job. Like, because I can share my knowledge. So, and I feel like my job matters and I'm not just a clog in a machine.
That is so, so nice of you to say. But basically, that covers everything. That also covers like my why, you know? Like, why do we do what we do? We have this excellent job of actually imparting knowledge. And if you see somebody's progress, then you're just happy. But you're more than just a teacher, Aldona. You're a person that just strives for like this. You're learning, you're developing your skills all the time.
Yeah.
I can always send you a question. Even an example from yesterday, one of the teacher posed a question on Slack asking she has a problem with some student. How does she sort it out? And then somebody answers and then Aldona's reply appears and it's like, bam, bam, like 20 different tips, hints, everything with resources. This is basically you, right? So I must say you're really in the right place and you really hit the right time with us as well, because you becoming a methodology manager at AKN was something we really needed, because now anybody needs anything, they just come to you because you always know the answer to everything,
Yeah.
So that really, really is appreciated. And so I have invited you here also to impart some knowledge on us and tell us a bit about, different things you're learning and things that are useful in your job every day. So with students, right? And so this very first thing is effective learning strategies. You are an author of a course at AKN, Effective Learning Strategies, that you have run multiple times with some students. And I would like you to share something regarding this methodology, let's say, with our audience. So what can you share here?
Maybe if I could just say something here is why I'm into effective learning. It's because, as I've mentioned, I was a very, very average student. And I honestly thought that there was something wrong with me and I was not intelligent enough to learn some things. And English was one of them, honestly. I am not blaming my teachers, obviously, no. But because I also know how much teachers have on their plate in general. But when I was at school, no one ever taught me anything about learning effectively. I was just, the typical learn it by heart, pass the exam, move on with your life. And there's nothing that was left in your mind.
But that is so true. They basically say, get ready for a test.
Yeah.
But they never say how to get ready, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't even ask that question because you are afraid that somebody's going to shout at you, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think in general, the first thing that I say to if when I get a new student is I always say, please make mistakes. Like, please try. Because if you don't make mistakes, if you don't try, you don't learn. It's all about making mistakes. Of course, it's also all about reflecting on those mistakes and try not to make those mistakes later. But don't be scared. Like, I was really scared of making mistakes my whole life, honestly, until even when I became a teacher. And even now, when somebody asks me something in our lessons, and I'm like, shoot, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Or like, to be honest, I need to check something. Of course, to be a teacher, you have to be knowledgeable. Hello. You cannot just say every lesson, I don't know, I'll check it.
Yeah.
But I think there's nothing wrong in just not knowing. Like, it's impossible to know everything. And actually, one of my students once asked me, "Oh, Donna, how long did it take you to learn English?" And I said, "I'm not done."
There you go. Yeah,
I haven't finished because... And I always say, do you know all the words in Polish? Like, no, because it's normal, of course. There's so many different areas you could improve your English in. And it's just impossible to know everything. So make mistakes.
Okay.
Don't be scared.
So would this be strategy number 1?
I would say yes. So make mistakes and experiment with the words you're learning. And I believe that, and this is something I also mention in my lessons a lot, that people that learn the fastest are people who experiment with the new words from our lessons. And I always say, you've got me, I'll help you. Like, practice in our lessons. Don't be scared. If you make a mistake, nothing is happening. Like, you want that mistakes later on, but you've got me, I'll support you, I'll help you. Like, just experiment with the new words we are learning in our lessons.
And could you elaborate on this a bit? What does it mean to experiment with new words?
We could start with a very simple thing such as make a sentence. And actually, it's one of my favorite activities because it's so simple, but yet so effective, because I even use it myself. So if I learned a new word, and if I really want to see if I understand this word, especially if it's a noun or a verb, I was like, okay, that's a verb. Like, what kind of nouns can I use with this verb? Or, what kind of verbs I can use with this noun? Because I remember when I was at school, I'm sure that it was like that. Maybe it wasn't, but that was the case in many schools when I was a teenager. Here's a list of 100 words, 50 words, learn it. You've got 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And no sentences, no context, for example,
Sure.
right?
And then in the test, you would get a list of those words and just you would be asked to translate them, right? Nothing else.
Exactly.
Dry words.
Yeah. So make sentences. As simple as that. That would be the first strategy. But Agnieszka, I have to start with retrieval practice. I have to, because I am obsessed with retrieval practice. And I remember when I discovered it, I was obsessed. Like, for the first few weeks, I was reading so much about it because, again, it was a proof that there was nothing wrong with me, when I was younger. It's just, I just didn't know how to learn effectively. So retrieval practice, in a nutshell, is pulling information from your memory or working with this information in your memory, rather than rereading the material you want to learn. And this can be done in many different things. For example, flashcards, everyone's favorite method to learn and to revise vocabulary, right? But what's really interesting, a lot of us don't know how to use flashcards properly.
True.
Right, so what is a flashcard? So you can use paper flashcards or you can use apps such as Anki or Quizlet, right? So on one side you write, let's say, a Polish word, and on the other side you write an English translation of this word, for example.
True.
So what a lot of us do, we look at the Polish word, and then we immediately turn over the flashcard.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It's not effective learning. Look at the Polish word and try to find the English translation in your mind. And in general, the more you retrieve and the broader context, the context you retrieve in, the stronger neural connections in your brain are.
Yeah.
So in other words, you learn more effectively and you remember better. It leads to better memorization. Yeah.
Because it's active, right? So this is this active learning, not passive. So reading and reading, it doesn't give you anything, right?
Exactly. And that's what I used to do as well when I was at school. When I was in high school, when I was at university, I would grab my notes or a book, and I had all these beautiful colorful markers, and I would just highlight everything. Yeah. It gave me the illusion that I was learning, I was not learning. I was just pretending. Like I was lying. Maybe not pretend. I was lying to myself that I was learning.
So true.
Because, So, and that's another thing. Don't just read or reread the material you want to learn. It's also not effective learning. Like you have to make your brain work.
Right.
Like you have to make that mental effort to remember. I know it's very often unpleasant, and because I learn, and this is how I prepared myself for this podcast as well, using retrieval practice, using also techniques that I've learned, and I know how uncomfortable it can be. Because at the beginning, for example, I use Anki a lot. So when I put a list of new words into Anki, like the first few days are not great because I don't remember and I get frustrated. But I know that if I just power through, and I will be, and that's another thing, be consistent.
There you go. It's a marathon, yeah?
Don't procrastinate. That's another topic.
We're not leaving the studio today, you know?
Yes. I'm sorry, but I have to say this before I forget. Yesterday between my lessons, I said to Skiba, hey, let's play, to my husband, let's play a game. And I said to him, I just would like to revise certain things for tomorrow's podcast, but let's play a game. And I literally said, because I need to revise that bit about procrastination. And he looked at me and he said, can you hear yourself? Like you're procrastinating right now. Like you want to play a game with me instead of doing what you should be doing. So us teachers do that too. Yeah. But I'm sorry, where were we?
So we were with this, retrieval practice, active learning. So basically not reading, not rereading, creating those sentences. And you mentioned that the first few days with Anki are difficult.
Yes. Thank you, Agnieszka. Yes, exactly. Because, but you have to power through, as I mentioned, learn actively. So like I said, you've got, let's say you look at your Polish word and try to find the English translation in your mind, in your brain, without looking at the other side of the flashcards. Yeah?
So what my teacher of Spanish asks me to do very often is, okay, take the words from the class and write an essay. I don't mind writing essays. I know it's not a popular activity for many students, but I don't mind. It takes me 20 minutes. I just write. If the topic is fine, then I can just write. So if she does not do it, I won't use these new words. But if she asks me, then of course, my laziness wins. And so I need to really retrieve those words from my memory to use them. Because rather than just finding those notes and looking at them, I'd rather use my brain. And this is this active recall, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I want to say that I absolutely confirm it works. Yes, it works. So when I hear retrieval, I'm like, I'll do that. Oh. That's basically what I learned from you. And that's so interesting, because I have been learning languages myself for years, including Spanish. I'm a very active student of Spanish right now. And before you came into my life, I was not using the right methods. Still, I was using a lot, but I wasn't using retrieval practice, And this is so funny considering that, I'm a graduate of 2 linguistic faculties here in Warsaw. So I do not know how that happens. But if we don't learn at the school and we also don't learn at university how to learn, how are we supposed to be good teachers, right?
Yeah, exactly. But Bill Nye said that everyone you meet knows something that you don't know. Absolutely, everyone.
Makes sense.
So I always have it in the back of my mind when I meet somebody else, and because I know a lot about the subject, but you know how it is. The more you learn, you feel like the less you know, actually.
So true.
And this is the case. Like,
Absolutely.
It's a bottomless pit that I'm yet to discover, and I'm not done. So, yes, I also realize how much there is to learn. But it's exciting.
It is, absolutely. Every meeting with you is exciting for me because I learn. I'm an experienced teacher, and I know what I'm doing in a class. But then I meet you, and every single time you will share something that is interesting for me. Aww. The only thing we have to do is, I think we have to to like keep an open mind and be ready to use these things. And this is my next question. So how open are people, like the general group of students, to try out all these new things? How do they react when you tell them about retrieval, about strategies, because majority of them do not know how to learn, right?
Yeah. It really depends on the person. It really depends on the person, on your character traits, on how you've been learning up to the point you met me, for example, because I'm a demanding teacher, but I'm also very, very forgiving and very understanding, because I understand that we all have families. Sometimes we get ill, and I wonder how you feel about that, actually, because you don't know what I do in my lessons. I know you know, but you don't know about that specific example, because I even say to my student that, listen, I even understand if you have a very bad day or you've had a very bad week and you just could not even look at our homework, and that's the only sole reason why you didn't do homework. And I even understand that, because we are only humans. These things happen. But consistency, nevertheless, that's the key. Consistency and learning, active learning, consistency, and learning for like 10, 15 minutes a day maximum. If you have more time, great. But trust me, if you want to revise vocabulary, 10, 15 minutes a day, but learning actively,
absolutely.
Learning actively is enough. Yes. So don't bite more than you can chew, first of all. And that's also connected to motivation in general. If you try to bite more than you can chew, your motivation will disappear like that. You will be very demotivated, and you will blame yourself.
Exactly. That is another problem a lot of students struggle with. They come in, they're like, I will spend minimum 1 hour a day with English, hour and a half, whatever you give me, it will be done. Yes. And then 3 months in, motivation completely gone, right?
Yeah.
And so how do you make it work? How do you speak to them so they understand that those 3 hours a day just won't be it?
Yeah. So maybe first, because I feel like I haven't answered your question, actually, because I've just started talking about it and I haven't finished, typical. But so I just would like to add that, yes, everyone's different. However, when I start teaching somebody, I talk a lot about effective learning, but I explain a lot as well.
All right.
So, for example, as you know, like in my lessons, as a teacher, I'm more of a guide that leads my students toward correct answers. Like I never spoon feed my students information. Like I want them to, as I've mentioned, make that mental effort and try to find answers for themselves. Like, of course, I always say, but you've got me. Don't worry if you don't know, right? There's nothing's wrong happening. I will help you. If you don't know the correct answer, really, like you've got me. That's what you're paying me for. I always make this joke. So I explain a lot. Or for example, as you know, I love creativity. That's another thing I've always been into creative activities in my lessons, but recently even more. And I love creative activities. And sometimes, but everyone's creative, by the way, absolutely everyone.
I agree.
Absolutely everyone in their own way.
What would be an example of, I'm sorry to butt in,
but please butt in as much as you'd like.
Because perhaps people do not even know what it means,
Absolutely, yes. So I was just going to say that's why these activities might feel very odd or silly, not to say stupid. And I understand that. That's why I explain why this particular activity, I know it's strange, but it's good for them. And I've got a perfect example now. That's going to be a very strange example, but that's a legitimate method of learning, I promise, of remembering vocabulary. Not only vocabulary, but mostly vocabulary, I believe. So, okay, Agnieszka, you're ready, but you have to work with me here.
Do I have to stand up?
No, you can. Okay. You can.
Let's go.
You can stay in your sit, but actually, you can see your feet, right? But that's okay. Just think of your feet. Yeah, you've got your right foot, your left, that's why I don't drive, right and left. And imagine 2 fried eggs.
On each of them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so 1 fried egg, another. But you have to, it's even better if you close your eyes and you really think about it. And can you see those fried eggs on your feet?
I love fried eggs.
Perfect, me too. And on the right foot, it says depend. And on the left foot, it says on. Prepositions, everyone's favorite, right? So you've got those fried eggs, 2 fried eggs depend on, right?
Right.
Okay, you can open your eyes. Now, think of your knees. Yeah, so your knees. Okay, and it's going to be funny, but knees. And on your right knee, you've got 4.
4.
And on your left knee, you've got a walk.
Okay,
For a walk.
Uh-huh.
For a walk. And the object you have to imagine is a poo. But I'll explain everything. Yes, I know. I'm sorry, everyone, but a poo. So on your right knee, you've got, imagine, you know, this emoji, poo emoji?
I can imagine
So
it, yes. My son uses
it
that.
will be a bit more pleasant. And I'll explain in a second why poo. I'm sorry. So poo on your on your right knee, and another poo on your left knee, and you've got for a walk, right?
Right.
For a walk. Close your eyes, and imagine for a walk and 2 piles of poo.
All right.
Okay, I'll explain everything later. Right, you've got that? You can open your eyes.
Yeah.
Now, please, let's move to breasts.
Okay, here
Just
they are.
think about if you want to release this podcast. Think of your breasts. Okay, and here on your right breast, it says right. And on your left, it says down, right down.
Right down.
And you know, like some people have their nipples pierced.
Yeah.
Imagine massive piercing, okay?
Okay.
Close your eyes, please. And imagine right down and massive piercing. Massive. Okay, great.
Done.
So now I'll explain why this is so strange. It actually, no, I'm sorry. No. Now, can you please tell me what you have on your feet?
Depend on.
Very good. And what objects do you have?
Fried eggs. My delicious breakfast. Yes,
very good. What do you have on your knees?
Poo.
I'm
sorry, poo is the first thing that comes to mind.
Exactly, but that's the beauty of it. And the words, do you remember the words?
For a walk.
Perfect. And your breasts?
Nipples.
Piercings! Because I said nipples, that's fine. So you've got piercing in your nipples. Exactly, piercing. And remember the words?
Write down.
Perfect. Well done, you. Wow, that was good.
Okay, so that's what you do.
So what is, as I've mentioned, I promise it's a legitimate method to learn vocabulary. It's because, in general, our brain loves everything that's strange. Silly, strange, weird. That's why pictures are so good. And actually, the New York Times, they've got this great series. It's called "What's Going On in the Picture." And they post every single week. They post a picture on the internet.
Right.
And one of my favorite pictures is a picture of an orchestra playing in a barn for cows. See, and you cannot. And when you just add some vocabulary to it, there's no way you will forget it.
That is
but maybe, if I may, I'll tell you about why all of this was so strange also. Because I did this activity with 2 sisters that I teach. And why fried eggs? And why depend on? Well, first of all, because we had depend on quite a few times in our lessons, and it was hard for them to remember. It's completely normal. That's why we chose depend on. And fried eggs, because a second ago I asked them, what do you eat for breakfast? And they said, depends on. And one of the sisters said, fried eggs. Sometimes fried eggs. That's why fried eggs.
Right.
Why poo on my knees? Because everyone that I teach, everyone knows that one of my biggest pet peeves is the fact that people do not clean after their dogs. I have a dog, and it's just something that really, I see red when people don't clean after their dogs. So every single time we talk about pet peeves in our lessons or something that really annoy you, I'm like, oh my God, people who do not clean after their dogs. So that's why poo.
Right.
And it was not my idea. Fried eggs were my idea, but poo was girls' idea. Was the girls, because I talk about it so much. See?
But it's not even like a basic level word. As far as I remember, those sisters, like they don't, their level is not that high yet. And they know the word poo. That's impressive, you know?
Yeah, exactly. No, they're great.
See, so that's what happens also, association. They associate it with you and your life and your pet peeve, and brilliant,
exactly.
excellent.
And that's actually another method which I love, and I use it quite a lot in my lessons. If you want to remember something, relate it to your life. So
exactly.
So let's say the phrasal verb cut down on something, right? And that's actually true. Like right now, I'm trying to cut down on sugar.
Right.
So think of facts, anything from your life that's related to that piece of vocabulary that you want to learn, or grammar, especially, right? Conditionals, everyone's favorite. Yeah. So in my lessons, we always together think of different kinds of situations, like real life situations, and I always give them examples from my life as well, where they could use this vocab.
And this is so true. My favorite for this type of thing is phrasal verbs. So what I do, and I did it in one of our immersions, and I remember that one student was very frustrated because he wanted to write during this activity, but the purpose is not to write, was that we had a set of phrasal verbs. We talked about the meaning, blah, blah, and then we had to create a story. And I said to them, listen, the story must be, if it's funny or very unusual, it's better. And if it's related to us somehow, it's going to make it easier for you to remember. And so there were 10 phrasal verbs, about 6 students. I was playing as well. And the way it works is I make the first sentence with the first phrasal verb. And then the second student must repeat my sentence with that phrasal verb. Plus, they have to add another sentence because it's a continuation of a story with the next phrasal verb. And then the next student. And every time the student has to repeat it from the beginning, not word by word. They have to keep the sense and the phrasal verb. And so it has to be repeated so many times. And then so many twists and turns happen in the story that is just funny. And so people laugh a lot. So it's like they are emotionally engaged.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's no way you can't like memorize all these phrasal verbs because they have been used so many times and everybody actively said them.
Exactly.
But there's no way you can write it. So one student was frustrated because, why can't I write? You know, when I write, it's going to be so much easier to remember. I know, but if you put this effort, this is this active learning thing here.
Exactly.
You're going to see, and because if you start writing, you won't be paying attention to what people say, and it's all about being concentrated. So this, like, I absolutely agree with you. Being engaged, emotions, and the more unusual or funny the story is. So, of course, we came up with a story of some criminal, some neighbor, gold rabbits with fevers. Like, it was so incredible. Nothing that would normally happen in a regular life, but they also connected it to us learning English. So, at the end of the day, it really worked out. And that's what you're doing, as I see, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I've got another example. Because I live in Lublin now, and I absolutely love cebulasz. I have to say it in Polish. It's cebulasz.
This sort of
it's
history.
With onions and poppy seeds, right? I've
There's
always
poppy seeds on it?
Yeah. Well, you have to come to Lublin.
I do.
Yes, and majority of people I know, they love it. And I pretty much grew up with cebulasz. This is pretty much what I ate every single day for breakfast. But I also recently I've used it in one of my lessons, and the word was fancy doing something. Fancy doing something, and I said to my student, I always fancy eating cebulasz, and I pasted a picture of cebulasz in our Google Doc. Or another example, my girls couldn't remember when we use should, like they weren't sure. So so let's practice again, let's revise again. Sorry, because I wrote, I shouldn't eat more cebularz. And I kind of made this picture of, so I took a picture of cebularz from the internet. I pasted it into Miro, so this virtual whiteboard. And I also took a screenshot of my face while teaching. I pasted it above the cebularz and I drew arms and legs. And yeah, I shouldn't be eating more cebularz because I'm turning into one. And they remembered. Yeah, so that's what I mean by those silly activities, creative activities. Stories, of course. We create a lot of stories in our lessons. And I always say it can be something, because a lot of people, when I say that, I just think of let's think of a story. It doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be something that could actually happen. Like, just use your imagination. And they said, oh, Donna, but I don't have imagination. Like, this is hard. And I say, that's still okay. Just a simple, so-called boring, it's still not boring, but you might feel boring, story will still be effective.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think what I observe with them is that at the beginning they say you're not creative, and then I create that first sentence for them, for instance, and they have to, once they have that first sentence, then they can create a continuation, and then they see the next one, and they actually, like, it all unravels, and it's absolutely amazing. So they are able to actually be much more creative than they give themselves credit for.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, yes. There's actually this activity that I've done a couple of times, but I would like to do it more often. To be honest, I forgot about it, and now you reminded me. A couple of times in my lessons, instead of focusing on my students' mistakes. Well, first of all, I always try to find a balance. That's what you did great. That's what still needs improving. So I never try to focus only on mistakes, of course.
Sure.
But once I said to my student, today, we are not going to talk about your mistakes at all. I will still write them down, of course, in our second table, but I will only be praising you for the whole lesson. Yeah. And that also helps.
Love this. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, positive reinforcement always does, right? Exactly. But I think the first thing is they have to open up to the possibility of making a mistake and not feeling like a loser. Yeah. Because that is very often the case with students, right?
Absolutely.
They're just afraid. So you making the point at the beginning of making those mistakes, I believe this opens them up and also has very good impact on their motivation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And there was one thing that I'm drawing blank at the moment for some reason, but there was one thing that I was going to mention. Oh my God, what was it? Oh, I know. Sorry. I know what I wanted to say. It's a very delicate balance because you want to be a supportive teacher, but at the same time, I don't sugarcoat it. I say how it is. Like I say, if you're not going to do your homework, if you're not going to revise, if you're not going to even try to implement those changes that I'm offering you, or even try to try different techniques, different ways of learning. Like, I am here to help you. Like, if you have any questions, doubts, email me, text me, tell me in our lessons. I'll explain again. We'll try. It doesn't mean that you have to like everything that I'm giving you. Of course, it's normal. But if you're not willing to collaborate with me and work with me, I will meet you, halfway. No problem. Absolutely. I will be there. Like, we will negotiate always.
Especially that you offer a lot of very different things. The variety is huge, right? Yeah. So as long as they are able to and eager to try at least some, then it's just going to work, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So now, that is taking me to the next thing, a lesson plan. We all have to be prepared as teachers, right? And so what would be the best ideal components of a good lesson plan? What components are necessary?
Yeah, that's also a very interesting question because every teacher is different and every student has different needs. But I do believe personally that there should be a revision activity.
Right.
Always.
I'm happy because I always do that.
Always. So what I do in my lessons, for example, is sometimes I've actually stopped that doing recently, and I switched to doing something something similar but different. But I ask my students to, okay, tell me 3 things you remember from our last lesson without looking at your notes. It can be anything. It doesn't matter. Anything that I taught you. I taught you in our last lesson. So that's retrieving information from your memory. But recently, I've switched to mini quizzes, like mini quizzes, and I think that's more effective. So these mini quizzes maybe take 5-10 minutes.
But then how do you administer that? Do you say, okay, so do you give more concrete questions regarding something?
I try to use a variety of questions. So, for example, a question could be I really like using pictures. So yesterday, I pasted a picture of a woman next to a radiator, and you could tell she was freezing cold. So I said to my student, okay, so look at this picture. It represents an expression from our last lesson. What is it? And she said it was something like radiators are off. As simple as that. But, radiators are off. That's it. Or they are turned off. Something like that.
All right.
And she remembered. Or question could be, let's say, let me think of a phrasal verb or of a word from my lessons. See, retrieval practice.
There you go.
I'm tasting my own medicine right now. Let's take something easy, like 10 off. 10 something off. The question could be, what can you turn off? That's it. Give me examples. What can you turn off?
All right.
Light, for example, radio, for example.
Okay. So context.
Yeah. Or example. The question could be a sentence and a missing preposition.
Sure.
Like, so I'm getting everyone's favorite beep, the bus.
Oh, everybody's favorite.
Exactly.
Right.
So I'm getting on the bus. So, and then I always try to include an open question. So, for example, let's say the expression that we learned was, it's worth doing something, right?
So difficult for many people.
Yeah. So the question could be, is it worth chasing your dreams?
All right.
For example. So they can answer this question. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. So revision activity first.
Yeah.
Do you reverse it sometimes, and do you sometimes revise at the end, or
no? I always start with a retrieving practice.
Sure.
So mini quiz, for example, sometimes, and this is why I also love contracts with my students, because sometimes I will also prepare a longer revision activity, like for example, to revise vocabulary or grammar structures from 2 months ago or 3 months ago. And I always put it as a part of homework.
Sure.
So, and I tell them, for example, Agnieszka, just to let you know that next week we'll revise vocab from this and that lesson. So it might be worth looking at your notes a little bit earlier than a day before, for example,
Absolutely.
So I do that. And this part is non-negotiable. I can negotiate pretty much everything, but not revising vocabulary.
Sure.
And then because I love flipped classroom. So that's when we very often discuss our homework, and it's usually a video. Most of the time it's a video, to be honest, and they have their own questions they have to answer at home. But there's this great activity where you give your students a video and you ask them to write questions about this video
and this
for
is
you.
Brilliant.
I love it because not only do they have to understand the video. Of course, there's nothing wrong in not understanding everything, and you don't have to understand everything. But you also practice making questions.
Yes,
right?
which is such a difficult thing for majority of
Yeah.
students. Actually, for all students, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because asking questions is always difficult. I'm not surprised. Yeah. And then I usually have some kind of a follow-up activity. I also like doing activities that are so-called creative activities. So, for example, if it was a video, I would ask my student, tell me what surprised you the most about the video. Tell me what you agree with, why, of course, what you disagree, why, of course. And are there any questions you'd like to ask this person from the video?
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah. And if they say no, I always say, just please think of one. Anyway.
And then again, we have question practice, right?
Yeah.
I love that. All right. Because our time is coming to an end.
Already?
Okay. I know.
So I just would like to add one thing, because then at the end, and every single time I observe a teacher and I see a teacher doing it, I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. Basically, you do like a recap of what you've done in that lesson, and you summarize, and that's what I do as well. Not as much as I'd like to, and this is like my New Year's resolution to do it more. So basically, let's say the expression was, I'm on the bus, right? So at the end of the lesson, you can say, okay, so what's the preposition that collocates with the word bus?
Right. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Okay, so again, active recall.
Yeah.
As always.
Exactly,
As always with Aldona. Aldona, retrieval practice, active recall, those two things. Okay, the last question is, what is your opinion on one-size-fits-all approach in teaching? I know that everybody talks about individual approach, blah, blah, right? And of course, we don't want to sound like we're this, cliche, whatever.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to you?
That's also a very good question. And that's a question that also I ask myself quite often, because as I've mentioned before, one person might like this particular activity, the other person will hate it. So as I've said, there are things that are non-negotiable in my lessons, and active learning is one of them, and revising vocabulary as well in general. And there are some things, because I know they work, and it's not my opinion, it's science.
Exactly.
So have a beef with science, not with me, how to learn. So that will also be hard for me to let go. So I won't let go of certain things, and but of course, I will first talk to this person.
Yeah.
I'll explain everything. Like, we will talk about it. I will never say, this is how it goes in my lessons, either like it or not. No, it's
That's
never
a game
like that.
changer, though,
Yeah.
because if you tell them where you're coming from, and you are going to justify why you're doing this and this and that, I think that is what actually makes students work and changes their attitude.
Yeah.
Because they know exactly why you're doing this or that. And I think this is also something that was not explained to us at school.
Yeah.
We just didn't know why they were doing all these things. They were writing on the board, asking us to copy. Why?
Yeah.
We didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
But they were asking to do a lot of other things. We were just not, told why.
Yeah.
All right. I want to say one more thing. Aldona, oh my gosh, you're so well prepared, like always. And I wanted to show something that we will add to this episode. This is what Aldona has sent me as a thing that she prepared. Look, this is page 1, page 2, and a bit on page 3. And these are different things, resources actually, that you can find. And we will, of course, add it to the episode. Resources of how to learn effectively, but also how to teach effectively for teachers.
Yeah.
And I want to say that thanks to Aldona, I have watched some of this.
Oh.
My students had to watch a lot of it because I forced them to.
Oh, glad to hear it.
And even if one is one that really stayed in my mind is Learn Like a Pro. I remember there's a series with episodes, and my students had to watch them week after week. One of my students is she's in media, and she's always worked with videos. And she said, Agnieszka, I must say one thing. It is so terribly made when it comes to the video, but it is so good when it comes to the content. She's like, why would nobody pay more attention to making it nice to watch, actually?
Yeah.
What I want to say is I watched it too, and that also was a game changer in the way I approached learning. And so I absolutely recommend this to everyone. This will be added. Aldona, thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
You are also...
Thank you for listening to me.
Oh, come on. I think that we have not covered half of the things that I wanted to ask you. So don't be surprised if there's going to be another episode with you. We'll have to
I
come
might
to
go on a very long holiday.
No worries. We still have time. So thank you very much for coming. And if there are any questions from the audience to Aldona, to me, about retrieval practice, active learning, anything, feel free to ask.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you.